Prince Harry's testimony yesterday and today was not really about phone hacking, blagging, or the granular mechanics of tabloid journalism. That was the legal scaffolding. What the court actually witnessed was a husband finally and publicly drawing a line about his wife and about the pressure that she's been put under. For almost 2 hours he was measured control, occasionally irritated, sometimes defensive. He argued back, he corrected phrasing, he insisted on context, he behaved like a litigant who knows he is being tested not only by a barrister, but by a culture that has already decided what it thinks of him. And then something shifted. It was not when his own childhood was discussed, not when his girlfriends were named again one by one like exhibits, not even when his mother's death was dragged back into the room. It was when he spoke about Meghan. They have made my wife's life an absolute misery. And at that point the performance stopped, the courtroom stopped, the voice cracked, and for the first time in this long legal saga, something uncontestable entered the space, and that was loyalty. And this matters because Prince Harry is often accused of many things, but loyalty is not one of the charges normally laid against him. He is accused of disloyalty to the crown, to tradition, to Britain, to restraint, to silence. And what we saw instead was an almost old-fashioned fidelity, the sort that says, you may do this to me, you may rewrite my past, but you will not do it to my wife without resistance. That line didn't come from strategy. It was not drafted by Sherborne. It was not for the press. It came from a man who has watched the same machinery grind forward again and recognised it too late the first time. The testimony repeatedly returned to the one phrase, open season. Harry rejects the idea that being royal converts a human life into a commercial quarry, and this is where the case becomes philosophically interesting, because the defence leans heavily on a confused notion of public interest. Harry's argument is simpler and frankly stronger. Curiosity is not the same thing as necessity. Entertainment is not accountability, and intrusion is not journalism simply because it sells. When he spoke of his wife, the legal abstractions collapsed. This was no longer about whether a journalist blagged a flight manifest or invented a source. It was about consequence. Meghan, he said, was subjected to harassment that was persistent, racialized, and unrelenting. Pregnancy didn't slow it. Motherhood didn't soften it. And silence, the old royal remedy, did not protect it. And here is the uncomfortable truth for his critics. This is exactly what a loyal husband should say. He didn't minimize, he didn't relativize, he didn't deflect onto institutional convenience. He stood in court and said plainly that the press made his wife's life miserable. Not awkward, not difficult, miserable. Much of the commentary since has tried to redirect that moment. Some say he's still angry. Some say therapy has failed him. Some say he lacks perspective. All of that misses the point. Anger is not the opposite of healing when it is proportionate and directed. Sometimes it is simply memory refusing to be erased. Harry's testimony also exposes a deeper hypocrisy. He is criticised for speaking, yet blamed for not speaking sooner. He is accused of oversharing, yet told his silence proves consent. He is mocked for invoking trauma, yet condemned not for transcending it neatly enough for public comfort. The truth is simpler. He broke with never complain, never explain, precisely because it failed when it mattered most. And this is where Meghan stands at the centre of the story, not as an accessory, not as a catalyst, but as the person who clarified his moral line. He says openly that this approach to the press changed because of how she was treated. That's not manipulation, that is recognition. I understand this deeply. There is at least one country that I love deeply, that I will never visit again, because that is the country where my partner was tortured. And I simply cannot, I cannot get over that fact. I feel defensive. I understand where Harry's coming from here. I understand deeply where he's coming from. I have deep sympathy for him. And the court, of course, will run for weeks more. It may succeed or fail on technical grounds, limitation periods, evidential thresholds, sourcing practices that will all be debated. But none of these will erase what happened in that room when Harry spoke of his wife, because that moment revealed something the tabloids have never been able to tolerate. A royal who will not trade his marriage for approval, a royal who is prepared to speak the truth And there was a moment of truth there, a moment of emotional, personal truth, which cannot be spun away by the people in the Daily Mail or the Express, the editors of the Daily Mail, the Express, and all these tabloid gutter newspapers. And I know some of the people who work for them or who have worked for them. I wouldn't have them round for tea. I wouldn't have them anywhere near me. They are contaminated with the filth of sticking their head in the bowl of the lavatory and flushing and flushing and flushing and seeing what comes up. We know what comes up. We know what comes up, and nothing goes down. If this is his last battle with Britain, as some have suggested, then it was at least fought on honest terrain by Harry. Not for popularity, not for closure, but for the simple proposition that marriage entails protection even when it costs you status. And whatever one thinks of Prince Harry, whatever one thinks of Meghan, that line in court was not petulance, narcissism, or performance. It was fidelity under oath. And that is not a weakness. It is the clearest thing he has said in years, and I salute him.
The British media's relationship with the monarchy has long been complicated, but recent years have exposed the depths to which tabloid journalism will descend in pursuit of sensationalism and profit. Professor Tim Wilson's analysis cuts through the fog of propaganda to reveal the systematic campaign of vilification that has targeted Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, demonstrating how institutional power, commercial interests, and public appetite for scandal converge to create an environment where accuracy becomes secondary to entertainment value. The couple's experience illuminates a broader truth about media scrutiny in the digital age, that relentless negative coverage, amplified across traditional and social platforms, can fundamentally alter public perception regardless of factual foundation. What makes this scrutiny particularly insidious is its selective application. While some royal family members receive sympathetic framing and protective editorial boundaries, others face coordinated campaigns designed to delegitimize and isolate. The resistance to accountability from those who have benefited from this unethical journalism reveals an uncomfortable reality. Many who consume these narratives lack the empathy to recognize the human cost of unchecked media power, and only when such scrutiny turns upon themselves do they question its ethics. Yet Prince Harry's decision to confront these systems, not merely for personal vindication, but as a stand for his wife, his family's legacy, and countless ordinary citizens similarly victimized by journalistic excess, represents a watershed moment where one individual dared to challenge the machinery that has long operated without consequence. Professor Tim Wilson's analysis. Professor Tim Wilson brings a refreshingly clear and unbiased perspective to the media treatment of Prince Harry and Meghan, cutting through the noise with intellectual rigor and factual grounding. His analysis demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of tabloid tactics, the relentless sensationalism, the selective reporting, the manufactured outrage that have been weaponized against the couple with calculated precision. Wilson's examination goes deeper, exposing the propaganda mechanisms at work, how narratives are constructed, repeated, and amplified across outlets to create a false consensus, how language itself becomes a tool of character assassination. What makes his assessment particularly credible is his ability to separate legitimate criticism from orchestrated character attacks, to distinguish between genuine reporting and the tabloid machinery that operates on rumour, innuendo, and deliberate distortion. He doesn't shy away from naming these tactics for what they are, while maintaining the intellectual honesty that allows skeptics and believers alike to engage with his argument on its merits rather than dismiss it outright. the relentless media assault on Harry and Meghan. The British tabloid press orchestrated a coordinated and systematic campaign against Prince Harry and Meghan that extended far beyond typical celebrity gossip, instead constituting a calculated assault on their safety, reputation, and well-being. Through extensive smearing and relentless coverage, media outlets worked in tandem to construct a damaging narrative, employing propaganda techniques designed to isolate the couple and turn public sentiment against them. These attacks were not random or spontaneous. Rather, they represented documented patterns of coordinated efforts that strategically amplified negative stories, distorted facts, and weaponized the couple's own words against them. The systematic nature of this assault has been analyzed by media, watchdogs, and legal experts alike, revealing how traditional press outlets collaborated to endanger Harry and Meghan's physical security, mental health, and ability to live with dignity. What emerges from careful examination of these tactics is not a mere disagreement over privacy rights or editorial standards, but rather an orchestrated propaganda machine designed to delegitimize and discredit them at every turn. Media ethics, ignored by those blinded by personal animosity. What becomes increasingly apparent in this discourse is that the public's indifference to ethical standards within media remains a fundamental obstacle to meaningful change. For many who harbour deep personal animosity toward Harry and Meghan, their contempt for the couple supersedes any genuine concern for upholding journalistic integrity and accountability. Rather than demanding that tabloid publications face consequences for their misconduct, the fabrications, invasions of privacy, and relentless harassment, these detractors seem content to allow the machinery of yellow journalism to continue unchecked. Their unwillingness to insist upon dignified treatment of public figures, regardless of personal feelings toward them, reveals a troubling erosion of societal standards. The tragedy lies not merely in the couple's suffering, but in the broader implications. When citizens surrender their commitment to ethical media practices in service of hatred, they inadvertently enable the same abusive systems to turn their weapons on anyone deemed unpopular or vulnerable. This collective abdication of responsibility, this refusal to champion a press held accountable to basic human decency, represents nothing less than a capitulation to the basest impulses of tabloid culture. Media's predatory pattern against the defenseless. The tabloid industry has long operated according to a calculated pattern. Target those least equipped to fight back, those without vast resources or institutional power to mount a defence. Prince Harry and Meghan became high-profile victims of this strategy. But they are far from alone. Countless ordinary citizens have been systematically attacked, their reputations shredded and their dignity stripped away by publications that face virtually no repercussions for their actions. This is not an isolated incident of poor journalism. It is a systemic failure that extends across multiple individuals and families who lack the means to challenge the relentless onslaught of unethical reporting. What makes this pattern particularly insidious is the absence of meaningful consequences for those responsible. Year after year, tabloids continue their predatory behaviour with impunity, knowing that most victims will simply suffer in silence while the machinery of misinformation rolls forward unchecked. Even when individuals do stand up to defend themselves, as Harry has done, the broader culture of entitlement within certain corners of the media persists. The belief that they can print what they wish, damage whom they please, and face little more than token accountability. Until serious lasting consequences are imposed on unethical journalism, until publishers understand that their actions carry real costs, This cycle of targeting vulnerable citizens will continue unabated. Prince Harry's courageous defence of principle. What truly distinguishes Prince Harry's position is that he stood his ground not merely for his own sake, but as a champion for those who couldn't speak for themselves. He defended Meghan against relentless attacks that sought to diminish and dehumanize her, proving that his commitment extended beyond personal vindication. Moreover, he fought with unwavering determination to honour his mother's memory and protect her dignity from those who would exploit her legacy for profit and sensation. But perhaps most significantly, his actions transcended the realm of personal grievance. He became a voice for his co-litigants and ordinary citizens who had fallen victim to the same predatory media practices, individuals who lacked the platform or resources to fight back. In doing so, Harry transformed what could have been a private battle into a principled stand for justice, demonstrating that sometimes winning isn't measured by courtroom victories alone, but by the willingness to challenge an entire system of corruption and demand that the press be held accountable for the dignity and safety of every person in their path. The ripple effect of standing against media tyranny. What Prince Harry's legal action accomplished extends far beyond his own courtroom victory. It fundamentally challenged the propaganda machinery that has long operated with impunity, exposing the cracks in a system that believed itself untouchable. By refusing to back down in the face of institutional opposition, he set a powerful precedent that others could follow, sending a clear message that media abuse and tabloid tyranny need not go unanswered. His courage in confronting these forces, despite the enormous pressure and personal cost, demonstrated to countless ordinary citizens who had been wronged by the press that resistance is possible, that standing one's ground matters, and that dignity is worth fighting for, not just for oneself, but for all those who lack the platform or resources to fight back alone. In this sense, his victory transcends the particulars of any single case. It becomes a beacon for a broader movement towards an ethical press that respects the humanity and privacy of every person it covers, regardless of their prominence or the size of their bank account. The victory beyond. Winning or losing. Standing firm against injustice constitutes success, and this is precisely what Prince Harry demonstrated through his relentless pursuit of accountability. Win or lose in the courts, his true victory lies in the fact that he refused to be silenced or intimidated by the machinery of a powerful press apparatus determined to destroy him. He fought for systemic change in media accountability, not merely for his own vindication, but for the countless ordinary citizens who lack the resources or platform to challenge the tabloids that have systematically targeted them. By holding the line where so many others have capitulated, Harry inspired others to demand ethical journalism standards and to question the very institutions that have long operated without meaningful consequence. His stand sends a resounding message that dignity matters more than settlement money, that principles matter more than peace, and that sometimes the greatest victory is simply refusing to let the powerful escape their day of reckoning. Whether the legal outcomes favour him or not, he has already won the battle that truly counts, the one for the soul of British media and the fundamental right of every citizen to be treated with basic human decency by those who claim to serve the public interest. Media manipulation. Why we must act now. The time has come for us to take decisive action by spreading awareness of the media manipulation tactics that have become far too commonplace in our society. We must share the evidence, the documented instances, the investigative reports, the testimonies from those who have suffered at the hands of unethical journalism, across every platform available to us, ensuring that this information reaches those who desperately need to understand what is happening. Public education is not merely helpful, it is essential, and we must commit ourselves to teaching people how tabloid culture operates, how narratives are twisted, and how sensationalism is weaponized against vulnerable individuals and families. This knowledge empowers citizens to question what they read, to think critically about sources, and to recognize propaganda when they see it. Furthermore, we must stand in solidarity with those brave enough to challenge this corrupt system, whether they are celebrities fighting back against libel and defamation, or ordinary people who have been wronged by an unaccountable press, because their courage creates pathways for real change. Every voice raised, every share, every conversation about media ethics contributes to a cultural shift that says we will no longer tolerate dignity being stripped away in pursuit of profit and scandal. The momentum is building, and through our collective action and awareness, we can help dismantle a system that has been allowed to operate with impunity for far too long.